Now, let me welcome my guest so that we look at the issues we are discussing today. And as I said earlier, please let's have your questions for the Electoral Commission and also share your experience with us. You went to vote, you participated in the process somehow. What is your experience? Share your experience with us. Your experience as to the process itself, your interaction with the EC, how you think the EC performed, and yourself, the security, observers, everybody. Let's have your views because they matter this morning. Do you have anything to say about what the NDC is saying? Of course, we need to hear that also. My guest this morning via Zoom will be Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, who is Executive Director of the CDD Ghana. Kofi Bentil is lawyer and Senior Vice President, Imani Africa. Rhoda Osei Afol is Project Manager, Codeo Secretariat. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I can see you on the Zoom. And GJA President, Roland Afilmoni. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for joining us via Zoom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Samson.
Great to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Right. We have also Dr. Srebo Kweku, who is Director of Electoral Services, the Electoral Commission. He will answer your questions. Let your questions go beyond arithmetic errors or whatever they are. Your personal encounter with the process. But here in the studio, Abdul Malik Kwekubako is Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed is with the NDC, former Deputy Trade Minister, booted out of Parliament and now restored by the constituents of Tamale Central. Gentlemen, thank you for coming to Newsfile.
Thank you.
Great. Let's listen to the EC. We'll be right back.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on the basis of the foregoing election results and by the power vested in me as the chairperson of the Electoral Commission of Ghana and the returning officer of the presidential election, it is my duty and honor to declare Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as President-elect of the Republic of Ghana. May God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation great and strong. Let peace reign. Thank you.
Right. So that is the Electoral Commission Chairperson, Jean Mensah, making the declaration and declaring the NPP's presidential candidate, President-elect. Let's begin with Rhoda of the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, who sent some 40,000 men and women on the ground to police the process. Rhoda, I have heard you discuss the matter, and you seem to divide your assessment into what happened during voting and the night of the 7th of December. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. Can you confirm if you can hear me?
Clearly.
Sure. Thanks. Right. So let me just correct this, that Codeo deployed 4,000 polling station observers to 4,000 polling stations across the country. And as you indicated, we monitor the process and then we also look at the outcome. So on election day, Codeo issued two main statements, which look essentially at the voting processes. And then towards the end of the day, we also issued a second statement, which looked at the closing and counting processes. I have looked at that report from 2012, 2016, and 2020 on the process, and I have seen that significantly, there isn't so much difference. It's the processes as far as voting is concerned went quite smoothly. If you recall, in 2016, we had a fairly smooth voting processes, and it was good to note that, again, we had quite smooth processes on election day in 2020. I look at the, if you look at the setup, you look at the availability of voting materials, you look at the performance of biometric verification devices, and essentially across the various polling stations that we have observers reporting, there were generally a smooth process. You didn't have that many challenges coming through from our observers. And then if you look at the issue of security presence, I mean, in 2012, for instance, if you look at that report, security deployment was around 85% of polling stations that we had observers reporting. In 2016, it's moved slightly to 88%. And for the 2020 elections, observers indicated that at 85% of polling stations, they had some security presence. In terms of the performance of biometric verification devices, if you look at our 2020 report, there were some challenges at just about 10% of polling stations, which was a bit poorer compared to 2016, where we had challenges in just about 6% of polling stations, but the situation was much worse in 2012. So generally, if we look at what happened at the availability of materials, we had said that the arrangement that had been put in place by the Electoral Commission was generally adequate and good enough to allow any voter to vote. Then towards the end of the day, we also looked at the counting and results declaration, and this is where we rely on the para-vote tabulation mechanism to essentially look at the outcomes, official results declared by the Electoral Commission. Let me indicate that whereas voting went quite well, especially also because the Electoral Commission had increased the number of polling stations, and so there were fewer queues at most places, you realize that the pressure moved rather to the collation centers. And so, I mean, in 2016, for instance, you had 28,000 plus polling stations. Now we had added on about 10,000 more polling stations. And so the collation centers were receiving from a lot more polling stations. And so there was a bit of congestion at the various collation centers that you saw collation take place. And unfortunately, I think this is where we had a bit of challenge in terms of crowd management and in terms of making sure that there was calm at various polling stations. Now, with the outcomes of the official results that were declared, and Kodio used the PVT to also look at what was coming in, let me just indicate that if you look at the PVT, what Kodio does essentially is to sample polling stations. So we used a stratified random sampling technique to select about 1,502 polling stations and just to use statistical principles and analysis to compare the figures that are coming in from the Electoral Commission to see if significantly there's any deviation in what is coming out from the Electoral Commission and what Kodio is also gathering from the polling stations. Again, let me indicate that our PVT estimate is based on results declared at the polling stations right at the end of the day. So some of the challenges that later on characterize the process in terms of the collation and the challenges, we didn't have that much, of those issues because our observers were at the polling stations. As soon as the results were declared, they picked the figures and sent to us. And so by midnight, as we stated in our statement, we had an estimate of how the voting was going to, the outcomes were going to be, plus or minus. I mean, if you look at the confidence range that we had a margin of error for the various candidates, which gave us a range within which we're expecting the official results to fall. What the PVT essentially says is that if you have results coming from the Electoral Commission falling outside of the range of estimates that we have for each of the presidential candidates, then there could be some problem somewhere. But to the extent that the figures fall within the range of figures that the PVT is able to provide us, if they align, then we say that they are consistent. The figures may not necessarily be the same, as you can see, for the PVT estimate that you provided. They are not exactly the same as the Electoral Commission's official results. Like I said, this is because this is essentially a sample of polling stations. But of course, if you look at the registered voter population for these 1,502 polling stations, you are looking at over 360,000 voters. And this is what you are tracking. You are tracking the choices, and this is the actual choices that were made at the end of the polls. So, generally, let me just say that 2 points. As far as the voting processes went, there were incidents, and our observers captured quite a number of incidents. But when we put everything together and we look at what transpired at the thousands and thousands of polling stations across the country, we say that, yes, there were some issues here and there, but significantly, this didn't impact on the voting processes. And if you look at the outcomes that were also declared by the Commission, the official results, we haven't seen any significant deviation for us to not have confidence in the outcomes that were declared by the Electoral Commission.
Thank you very much, Rhoda. Hold on. I'll return to you to ask you to look at your assessment of the Electoral Commission in the last 2 days or so. We have heard commentary from you about the corrections that they have had to make, and what does that do for you after you had, emphatically endorsed the EC's credibility and competence in the organization of the elections. I get to Afil-Moni, who is head of the journalists in the country, and before the elections, you were urging journalists and advising journalists to, act in consonance with the ethical, code, among other things, and where there were fears of potential attack of journalists, you ask journalists to be bold, brave, and go ahead and do an independent and fearless, job. This is how we finished it on election headquarters. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll ask Afil-Moni to tell us how he thinks his people performed on the ground.
Nana Addo has 6,640,809 votes, representing 51.30%. John Mahama has 6,121,817 votes, representing 47.29%. Now others, including rejected votes, comes to 181,576 votes, representing 1.40%. Now, the 5 remaining constituencies to be published by your election headquarters have about 184,000 valid voters. With an average of 78% voter turnout, this could translate into 145,000 votes. Now, if all 145,000 votes are given to John Dramani Mahama, it is statistically impossible for the NDC candidate to achieve 50% plus 1 or more votes. Now, based on the above, your election headquarters projects Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to win the 2020 presidential elections.
Yes, Mr. Afil-Moni, let's hear you. How did your men and women perform?
The projectional accuracy displayed by the multimedia group encapsulates the performance of the Ghanaian media on election day and as far as election 2020 is concerned. I know the main opposition party has troubles over such projections, and it takes boldness, it takes competence, it takes fearlessness to do this kind of job. And let me use this glorious opportunity to sprinkle a stardust of commendation on the Ghanaian media community for their conspicuous dazzle during the election night, the following day, for their willingness to die for the nation, for their reportorial skills, editorial competence, for their energy budget, which they displayed copiously throughout the voting process. Ours is a human institution, and like all human institutions, perfection is an impossible goal. So this is the cases of imperfections in sections of the media, but these imperfections do not obscure the fact that the media did exceedingly well, for which they should be applauded.
What was your lowest point as far as looking at how the media and its interaction with the elections went?
Something we all know that standards in the media are not uniform. In certain sections of the media, standards are appreciably high. In certain sections, other sections, standards are abysmally low. But if you square the low against the high, I believe the high overshadows the low. Standards are not a happy instance. Standards are the fruit of investment in training, investment in hiring the quality of practitioners. But we all know that in certain media houses, because of the propensity of owners to maximize profits, they go in for substandard practitioners. And like the typical computer language, garbage in, garbage out. And we also understand that the media, Ghanaian media, reflects the partisan divisions in this country to the extent that the partisan bent orientation of media houses dictated how they should do their work. But on the flip side, we have a crop of journalists who are bastions of neutrality, and they really give us, enhance our image as far as the election coverage is concerned. So we are so grateful for this crop of journalists, multimedia group, CTFM, TV3, GBC, My Roots, radio, television, and many, many others who endured all the pressure, who spent sleepless nights, who endured pressure. You know, the litany of press conferences at midnight, the flyer of activities, well covered competently and timeously by the media. And so this is a big plus for media ascendancy in this country.
How should the media continue to interact with, more particularly, the political parties and their supporters? There's quite a bit of cyberbullying going on. Johnson Esiedun Ketia, General Secretary of the NDC, openly, when we thrust all our microphones in front of him, accused the media of churning out fake results. We here at election headquarters have had our fair share of conspiracy theories going around about how we have been in bed with the government to project for Nana Akufo-Addo. But we are familiar with this terrain. The template never changes. Once you call it for one party, the other party attacks you. How should we continue to interact with these stakeholders?
Exactly. Given the red-hot anger and high voltage tensions, it came as a surprise that Aseni Ketia went on that tangent. And so his emotive statement should be examined within that context. And so, but the fact is that, as I said, we are used to, we have been inured to such caustic, acidic comments. But this also places a high responsibility on us not to fan the flames of tension or stoke embers of violence. So we have a responsibility imposed by heaven, imposed by a profession, to help pull this nation from the current precipice from which it finds itself. We've been here before. in 2008, 2012, were teetering on the brink of self-destruction, and it took the redemptive benevolence of God to save this nation. So we are not out of the womb, as you can tell. Tensions are so high. The whole nation is enveloped in the kind of tension. We can crystallize in something else. But touch wood, Ghana will move on, and the media have to play a frontal role in creating a consensual framework to resolve these issues and to ensure that at the end of it all, Ghana will be at peace with itself and at peace with the rest of the world.
Finally, what are you doing as a GJA for journalists who, encountered unfortunate experiences, including getting hospitalized? And what will be your final words?
We entered into an agreement. In fact, SIC, State Insurance PLC, rallied to our aid with a package of 20 million cedis to address some of these challenges. So as we speak, 3 of our colleagues, 1 was operated upon yesterday, 3 are in serious condition, and SMC acted with urgent promptitude. And so as a result, SMC has a package to release a package of 40,000 cedi lump sum and 3,300 cedis every month to the victims of such attacks. And the degree of injury reflects the magnitude of the task or the challenges journalists go through in covering such election. So the least we expect from political actors is commendation and not condemnation. So it's unfortunate that I said petted us with verbal stones, and we've been monitoring the media scene, and some verbal stones continue to be pelted. But we urge all media practitioners to be unafraid and unintimidated, because this is the cross we have decided to carry, and we ought to carry this cross in the supreme interest of Mother Ghana.
Thank you very much. Anytime I have had any interaction with you, I hear the refrain from you that critical journalism must not die. I can assure you it will not die. Thank you very much, Afil Moni, GJA President. I'll come to my guest in the studio, but let's go to Kofi Bentil, who is on the line. Kofi, observing from the sidelines and also going to cast your ballot, like myself, I think you and I, we both made a post on social media saying how we were able to vote under 5 minutes. Tell us your experience.
Well, good morning. My post was based on general information received from across the country, and we were trying to triangulate. So we were getting information from different places and trying to find what the middle ground was. And it was a pleasant thing for me to realize that most people we spoke to were saying that they didn't spend more than 5 minutes. And even with the more than 5 minutes, a lot of them spend that time in the queue. But when it came to the voting process itself, apparently things went very, very smooth. And I thought that was worth, recording. So I put it out there that the average, voting experience for the average Ghanaian was 5 minutes or less. There were people who experienced a few, hiccups here and there, but I think generally this was the story across.
Yes, I'm sure when we talk about the 5 minutes, we talk about the voting time. We are not talking about being in the queue, because we know people had been in the queue for hours. And even by the time that polls closed, in Tamale, we had reports of people still stranded and some of them giving up and leaving the polling station. But in my experience, I decided, and I do that every voting year, that I won't go there in the morning because I know people will rush. I wait until about 1, 2 o'clock thereabout. And somehow in the communities I find myself to vote, often by the time I get to the polling station, there's practically nobody there. So I just go vote quickly and leave.
That's what I do too. I go after 12. So all the times that I voted, I've gone after 12. And previously, I have gone through no queue and I vote around Dansoma, So that has been the experience, and that was the experience this time too. It was worth, recording. So at least we did not go back, if anything at all. there was a bit of improvement in that. So I thought we would particularly note that, especially given that in the most advanced country in the world, some people spend 7 hours voting.
Right. So we'll return to, talk about the bigger matters surrounding the process itself. But Dr. Srebo Kweku is also with us. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning, and we want to thank you specially. I'm talking about election headquarters and our audiences, because you made yourself available to us through Israel Lai, who was in your office throughout the period, and anytime there were issues, you brought us, up to date, and that assisted our viewers and majority of the citizens who were tuned to the election headquarters, including the president, watching us as we deliver the elections. So the EC applauds itself. Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Let me also put on record that it was Israel who offered me lunch on Tuesday, because he read that I was so tight that
you have to refund that lunch.
He told me that I need to eat, so he bought me lunch. So I'm using this platform to say thank you to him.
All right, thank you very much. Israel is a very nice guy, you have to know that. And his wife does some very good jollof. So the EC applauds itself for perfect or a near perfect execution of the 2020 elections, not so?
Yeah, you are right. And it's not EC alone. All the international observers, I hear it was put on the BBC that it was a boring election because you didn't see much activities. People say we see long queue, people will be fighting, but because of the breaking of the centers into smaller polling numbers, you didn't see the queues. And I saw on CNN that the other African countries should learn from Ghana. So Ghanaians, we should be proud of ourselves.
Great. Did you experience any challenges with hindsight? What would you want to do about them?
Something, what I would say is that if you are covering 38,622 centers, and you have about incidents around 20 places and the rest, these are normal things. I am told that around Sisara East or West, some of the old ladies were finding it difficult to have their fingerprints captured. But all in all, everybody who went to the center read that the BVD was very, very fast. So that's why we avoided the long queues. So there were some few places, and maybe also when it comes to the result declaration, the Eastern region one could have been avoided. When you do collation out of 33, you only do 32. So, and later you rectify that, but I believe with diligence, it could have been avoided. And those ballot box snatches, they should have also avoided that. All these things ended up frustrating the timeline that we set for ourselves. So, but I am proud to be a Ghanaian.
You refer to Eastern region situation, and you say it could have been avoided. Can you explain that for our audiences who may not have followed, the news in the course of the week, particularly this platform, Newsfile? We know that corporate leaders and middle-class people who get busy, they find time on the weekend to listen. So this may be the first time somebody is going to get the explanation you gave. Bring us context.
Thank you very much, Samson. What happened is that normally they will give you the summary of the results, meaning that they would have collated the number of constituencies within that region. Eastern region has 33 constituencies. So once you get a summary, you know that they have collected the 33. So it was when the parties were signing that they had a call that they made a mistake. They omitted Ayenswano. Yesterday I said it's rather Ayenswano. So instead of collecting the 33 centers, they collected 32. So the Ayenswano was added, and we got the result. They signed, and we added it to the collation.
Right.
So if they had not been a bit. Come again. So
there was a
If it had not been fast,
there was a first result sheet That did not include Ayensuano, correct?
Yes.
And then a second result sheet came in. That included Ayensuano.
Correct.
Right. So will you fault the opposition that when they saw that, they became alarmed as the votes, though had increased for both President Mahama and President Akufo-Addo, there was an advantage for President Akufo-Addo?
Something. If you look at CI 127, Regulation 44, Sub-Regulation 10, if you have it, it said that the regions should collate the constituency results. Then the national will collate the regional results. And the joy in it is that it was not anybody who told them that they have not included the Ayensuano. They themselves realized that and corrected themselves and brought the correct one. And that was what was used. You know, when you are doing such exercises, the tensing and the rest, and fortunately, the political parties and the rest are also there. They should also be helpful because they are there as checks on us. So that in case we make any mistake, they can also call our attention to. And this is the mistake one that I'm talking of, the parties have signed. So it means that if they themselves have not corrected themselves, we would have used the wrong collected result from the region. So the party should have, I'll talk of the parties. They should have also helped us by calling our attention to it. So it was a mistake, but the most important thing is that at the national level, it was the corrected one which was used, not the error one.
Okay, so I'll admit to you that I was on air at the time and I got the information and I got alarmed by it because I saw the original sheets, handwritten, that gave a figure and then another sheet that looked like photocopied and transmitted, which had a higher figure, and that figure is what you had put on your site. So I immediately couldn't reconcile what was there. So thank you for the clarity that you bring.
And let me say that, so if you compare the first one with this one, all the candidates had increased numbers.
That's correct.
And the difference between the first and the second one is the vote for Ayensuano constituency.
Right. But the alarm of the opposition was that without the explanation, even though both candidates increased their votes, there was quite a substantial increase that they felt they were disadvantaged. Now, so can you give us
You made a statement, and I want to entreat Ghanaians to go onto our website. You know, that is the transparency we are talking about.
That's right.
First time in the history of our Electoral Commission. All the 16 results are on our website. So you can conveniently sit in the comfort of your house, your room, your office, and do the national collation yourself. And when you do it, you can now compare with ours.
Okay. Well, since you brought up that, can we get an explanation to the Esikado, Ketam constituency situation too, where the allegation is that you had 3 candidates on the ballot and you actually advertised that, but later you pulled it down and published results for 6 candidates. How do you explain that?
You are referring to the parliamentary?
That's correct.
But I'm talking of the presidential.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I'm moving to a different issue so that you explain to our audience.
But I am not privy to the issue that you are talking about. I have to find out.
Okay.
Because my duty, the constituency, the parliamentary results are to be collated by the return officers at the district.
That's right.
Mine was to collate the presidential. So my focus was more on the presidential. As I speak to you, I don't have a lot of the parliamentary results because my focus was to collate the presidential one. As I said, if you look at the law, CI 4410 tells us that the national should focus on the regional results for the presidential. So as I speak to you, I'm not privy to a lot of the 275. What I'm privy to is that we asked the regional directors to give us the list of the winners So we'll have the winners, but the details of what votes, I don't have that one.
But if
so
it is the case, if it is the case that this had come to the EC's website and then subsequently deleted and re-uploaded, then it will suggest that at the headquarters, you are aware of some anomaly that may have occurred. Not so?
That's what I said.
Okay.
We have the IT team that is working on the other things. Our intention is that by the close of next week, we'll put all the constituency results and all the 38,622 results on our website.
Okay.
So there's a team working on that. But for the results and the rest, my concentration or my duty is to collate the national results for the presidential.
Okay.
But there's a team working on.
Right.
So within the next week, you will get the constituency by constituency results and polling station by polling station results. We want to put all of them on our website. We want to improve on the transparency so that anybody who wants to do the tracking can track the result from the polling station to the constituency, to the regional, and to the national. But as I speak to you now, it is the regional results that are there. So you can add the 16 results from the region.
Right. Can you
also have the national results? Can
you give us an update on your officer who was caught tearing up ballot paper to make Mahama appear number one on the ballot? What's up with?
We have two of such cases. One in Boku Central and one Awutu West.
Right.
We handed them to the police, and I've not done the follow-up, so I can't. But on that day, we handed them over to the police.
All right. How many of your officers, if you have a figure to it, did you find infracting the law, and what were their sins exactly, and what are your expectations as to what should happen to them?
But for now, what I know is the one you just referred to, that they were tampering with the ballot paper. We have other cases to where the people were not validating the ballot. They were not validating. But the instruction went to them that if it's not validated, but it's part of our ballot, the voters should not suffer for it. So once it is within the serial number and our officer misbehaved and did not validate, it should be validated.
All right.
So these are the two issues that I know.
All right. Thank you very much. And gentlemen, please have a bit of patience for me. I am picking questions for Dr. Sribo Kweku. Kweku, I want him to at least try and exhaust some of the questions coming, clarify for people's understanding. All of that helps in, reducing the tension, so to speak. And then I'll come to you to have a discussion. So we have some good news. That yesterday, the ballot snatcher, Techiman, the Techiman Circuit Court, I'm talking about the Sine West case, the Techiman Circuit Court handed the ballot snatcher, the 39-year-old guy, handed him, he pleaded guilty to snatching the ballot box. They asked him why he did it. He said he doesn't know what came upon him, and he snatched the ballot box. Now, he was handed 3 months in jail, plus a fine of 3,600 Ghana cedis. If he defaults in paying, he will suffer a further 6 months in jail. You had wished that people who were violating the law will get custodial sentences. By the law, the maximum for this guy would have been 2 years in jail, or in addition to that, 6,000 Ghana cedis. And then, as we know, he has been banned from the day he finishes his sentence from being registered or being allowed to vote for 5 years. I want to know what you think about the sentence he got, the punishment he got, and how the EC will police this guy to ensure that he never has the opportunity to vote in the next elections or any public elections in the next 5 years.
Something you know must stand. I would have wished that he's given the 2-year sentence, the 6,000 and the banning. Because even the ban should have been for life, even though it's not in the law. Because if you don't want people's vote to be counted, then why should we be voting? So I would have wished that he's given the full 2 years, the 6,000, and ban for life, so that he will not go closer to elections again.
Right. How are you going to ensure as the Electoral Commission that Christian Nupeta does not take part in elections, public elections, in the next 5 years?
Something, the name is already in the register. So it can be quarantined. And once it's quarantined, we have the biometric. So anytime he tries to register, the name will pop up. So as long as this current register exists, once we quarantine him, he cannot not register, he cannot vote. Okay.
Unfortunately, your hefty punishment you wanted for people like that didn't happen. Let's talk about your errors in the results. You effected a correction without an apology. Do you underestimate the consequence of what you did?
Which one are you referring to?
Let's talk about the total valid votes. We can start with that.
No, something. I don't know whether you have seen the results. The figures did not change. So the vote for all the candidates remained unchanged. The percentage remained unchanged. But when you add the votes together, you get a total valid vote. So it was when Madam was quoting the total valid vote that he quoted the total vote cast. But it did not affect the results at all. So I don't know where the apology is coming from. All the votes for each of the candidates remained unchanged. If you add the total votes together, you get the total valid vote. That is 13,121,111. Then the rejected ballots, 313,463. Then you get the total vote, the 13.4. So it was when he was quoting the total valid vote that he misquoted the total vote cast. But the vote for the candidates did not change.
Yes, we clearly understand that the outcome did not change. But as you admit, and through your own press release, that's an admission that she quoted 13,400,000 plus, and you made a correction that it ought to be 13,100,000 plus. So that is a correction you effected.
That I'm saying that she quoted the total vote cast instead of the total value vote. But on the result sheet, everything is correct. So the total value vote is there. You add the rejected ballot, then you get the total vote cast. So when he was lifting the total vote cast, total value vote, he lifted the total value vote. And don't forget, the law says that if you get 50% plus, and the 50% was calculated on the total value vote. So there was no mistake in the calculation. It was the quoting of the figure that there was a slip. So it did not affect the vote for the candidates.
Okay. Your 24-hour timeline to declare the results. Is that part of the cause of the blunders that many people appear to talk about? There are many people who are talking about you uploading things, deleting them on your social media handles and your website as well.
Samson, the vote calculation has nothing to do with the social media handles and the rest. It is the flow of the result from the polling station to the constituency, to the regional, to the national. And unfortunately for us, immediately after the election, it rained. So it also delayed the counting. I don't know whether you followed that. Then those people who were snatching ballot papers, such ballot boxes and these things. And if you remember, I was always saying that all other things being equal. So if people who had allowed the whole thing to flow as it were, we would have done it within the time. But when people are snatching ballot boxes, people are fighting over materials and other things. So all these things serve as impediment in the flow of this. So I wouldn't say that the flow affected the errors. And you know, when you are doing huge issues like that, there are petty issues that can crop up, but it should not affect the total genuineness of the reason. The most important thing that I am happy with is that everybody is satisfied with the flow of the voting at the police stations. I heard you and my brother Asante mentioning that. You may have one or two, because we're talking of 38,602. The most important thing is that all the media houses, the observers, and the rest had access to the results. So some of them were able to call the results and other things. Now, if you look at, I know Kodewo has come out with the results. Most of the media houses also come out with the results. And the results are not the same, but they are similar. Everybody had 51% plus. It has not changed. Everybody had 47% plus. It has not changed. And that talks about, so first, the transparency was upheld. That is why the media, the observers, and they had the results. That was done in secrecy. Two, whatever we put together is similar to what others had. So the record does not show, the records do not show that a loser has become a winner and winner has become a loser. And that is the joy that I have.
Okay. So I think we can hold on at that point. We'll return to you on the questions of that have been raised about the credibility of your processes
I wanted
and the
to
outcomes.
make a quote, if you allow me.
You said?
I wanted to make a quote, if you allow me.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm happy my brother Femoni is here. There was a program, DJ program at the press center. I was fortunate to give the keynote address, and the American ambassador, Her Excellency Stephanie Sullivan, made a statement that lies use escalator, truth use the staircase, but whatever be the case, all of them will arrive. So my joy is that at the end of the day, the truth will be established.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we are showing in your shots, all of you who have the opportunity of the television, the ballot box snatcher who has been convicted by the Sunyani Circuit Court. He's in your shots. So his name is Christian Nupeta. If you come across him somewhere, he's attempting to vote in any public elections in the next 5 years, don't allow him. He's not qualified to vote. He's been banned from voting for the next 5 years. We don't want ballot box snatchers in our process. Let me finish with you on this one before I go to my other guest, actually. So in respect of the Sin West, that is still outstanding because of this particular guy who stole that ballot box and broke the MPP seal on the box, correct? Dr. Kweku. Hello, Dr. Kweku.
Hello, Samson.
Yes, I'm asking about the Sin West situation. Because this guy stole the ballot box and broke the MPP seal, that seat is outstanding. You are not able to declare the results for that constituency yet. Is that not so?
Yeah, Samson. There's a court injunction on it.
There's an injunction.
So when the court lifts the injunction, then we'll look at it.
Okay. What's the solution you are thinking about whilst the court also deals with the situation?
Let the court lift the injunction.
No, the injunction does not stop you from thinking how you want to resolve the issue.
Yeah, so we don't want the situation where somebody who cited the court is dealing with it and we also come out with solutions. So whatever we are thinking of is within us. The court will lift the injunction, they will come out with it.
Okay, the injunction says that you should not declare the results until the court has heard the case.
Good. So we want to listen to what the court has to say.
In such a situation, what would have been your approach? Where one ballot box is at stake, what would have been your approach?
When one ballot box is at stake, we look at the effect of the total number of votes in that polling station. If it will not have any effect, if it's given to the runners-up, we will declare the results.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
The scenario is two. Either it will be counted or it will be rerun. All
right. Thank you. And this injunction is by the NPP, the NPP's candidate?
Yeah, I'm told so.
All right.
I'm told so. I don't know who put it, but I think from the NPP's side.
All right. Thank you very much. Kofi Bento, so far my interaction with Dr. Kweku, what will be your comment? Hello, Kofi. Kofi, please unmute. Unmute.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. We have to commend the EC for doing their job. And if you listen to the Cordell lady and those of us who have followed these things, you know that this is not very different from previous elections. The problem was that this election was put at risk because they were insisting on using totally new equipment. That issue we'll deal with because there are still a lot of things to do there. A number of things to have come up which reflect a certain institutional lapse. It is not excusable that today political parties with fewer resources are putting up electronic collation systems. This is arithmetic. By now, we should have been applying the new money that the EC will be getting to putting up a proper elections collation center where, as the figures come in and they are certified, they are put up there, and then we will not have simple arithmetic mistakes like the one we had, which is now throwing everything up. People are just denying that this is a factual situation because the EC made simple mistakes. So we would commend them because it could have been worse. What we've gotten is what we paid for, but there's a lot of work to do with our EC to make them even better. We cannot rate ourselves by the worst. We should rate ourselves by the best. So I commend Dr. Shirbo Kweku and Co. I gave an interview to Roland Walker, about a week or two before the election. And when these things came up, I told him that, look, I expect the EC to find a way to pull through this, just like they found a way to pull through, the registration. But the way they are going to use is not exactly what they told us they were going to do. So I don't want to take away from the shine. In fact, unfortunately, the EC itself has taken the icing from its own cake. But we as citizens sitting in our houses and being comfortable that Ghana is at peace, what we need to do now is to commend our EC and commend ourselves as a people that we managed to put things like this in place and go through an election, especially when it doesn't have that much foreign funding. So we are happy and we should, bask in that joy for a while. But there is a lot of work to be done with our EC to bring it up to the standard that it is capable of. And also, our elections cost way too much. That is not justifiable. If we did a proper audit of the EC, their assets and their systems, I believe our elections can cost less than half of what they cost now. And again, I think that issue can be dealt with later on. For now, let's enjoy the success of our EC.
Right. On the cost of elections, Imani has been making that argument for a long while. It doesn't appear anybody is listening. Rhoda, let me finish up with Rhoda so Rhoda can take leave of us, and then we'll take a break. We'll return. Then I have my guest here in the studio with Kofi Bento, and then we shall be joined also by Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh to look at the fallouts and the questioning of a hung parliament, governing with a hung parliament. Like it or not, it doesn't look like it's going to be easy. Rhoda, what are the observations that Cordell made about security and the excesses of the elections, as in the infractions, and what are your recommendations going forward?
All right. I think earlier you raised one important question about the errors and why Cordell had confirmed the outcome. So I think it's important that we heard from Dr. Kwaku. I thought that it was clear from the statement that the EC issued earlier when they were correcting that error. People are talking about mistakes. I think we should be specific. The issue is what errors have been committed and how do these errors affect the outcomes that were declared. And like they indicated in their statement, the errors that were made as far as the presidential election results that were declared by the chairperson was concerned, one, it didn't affect the computation for the vote shares of the individual candidates, okay? As he explained a while ago, it was the reading, in the course of the reading that the EC chair misquoted figures. I think she switched some of the figures, which is also still unfortunate. However, as far as we are concerned, I mean, like we were saying, our PVT estimate is based on results from all the polling stations that we have PVT observers, including even Techiman South, which the EC is yet to add to its collated figures because we pick for polling stations and not at the collation centers. And so if you look at the range of figures that we had, it is possible that even the winner could have gotten 52%. As far as our PVT estimate is concerned, that would have still been acceptable. And you could have gotten also less than what was declared. So the PVT essentially gives you a certain expectation, a certain range within which if the figures fall within, you have some level of certainty that these figures are accurate. Like I said earlier, they may not necessarily be the same because this is statistics you are drawing on a sample. So there may have been mistakes, but so far as these mistakes didn't affect what was declared, and even if it did, so far as they still fall within the PVT estimate that Kodio provided, we still say the figures are consistent. So I think that clarification is important. Now the issue
right,
about
but Rhoda, there are those who say for such a closely fought election, where you could say that the two candidates, President-elect and John Mahama, were almost neck to neck, the slightest blunder has the potential to throw the country into chaos. And therefore, the EC appears to have an attitude that doesn't seem to admit that this could have brought some very dire consequences, and that is not good enough. It does not even apologize.
No, I do agree, and it's quite unfortunate. And it's the same thing with the declaration that they made about the 24 hours. First of all, the EC is not under any pressure to declare results within 24 hours. You had the freedom to declare. The most important thing was that you were going to declare results as soon as they were available. So that internal pressure that they put themselves under was quite unfortunate. And I think this came up earlier in the discussions. And the caution we made earlier was that they should be careful not to make mistakes. Unfortunately, some of these issues have come up. And the point I'm making is that we should look at the specific mistakes that have been committed and how they affect the outcome. So I think that those are clear. We are not saying mistakes are fine.
What's wrong?
But they are unfortunate. But we are also looking at how these mistakes affect the ultimate outcomes at the polls. The other issue I want to touch on is the issue of the regional collation centers. And if Dr. Kweku hasn't left, I think they should be thinking about this again. What was the real value in adding regional level collation centers? Okay, because you got the impression that there was further delay. If previously results once collated at the constituency center came straight to the national level and they could just put them together, and now they went through the regional collation centers for certification, and yet when they ended at the national level, they still had to go through another form of certification. Then the question is, what was the value of the regional collation centers? How much did they improve on the quality of the results that came up? And is it that we can revisit this issue again? Because I am struggling to see the real value that these regional centers added. If anything at all, if the regional collation teams were at the national office, where each week you had teams dealing with specific regions, and at the end of the day, once they certified, the EC, the chair could just, the returning officer could just add these up. But if they came to national level and we still have to go through another level of certification, then really it's difficult to get this, because what it has ended up doing is that it's created another
hold on there, Dr. Kweku. Dr. Kweku, if you are listening to Rhoda, would you like to react to that? It appears there was no value to the regional collation centers you created.
You see, what we should understand is that if you look at the structure of the commission, we have the district, regional, and national. the region is supposed to supervise the work of the constituency. So previously, all the results will go to the region for the region to ask questions, certify himself or herself the data before they are passed to the head office for final collation. So we thought it was that if the person is going to all these things with them, then why don't we give him the opportunity to also do the collation? So that when he's satisfied with the result from the constituency, he also collates and says that from our region, this is the result I'm bringing.
Interesting. But that's where you placed a lot of emphasis and hope that through that layer that you created, you were almost setting that you could give us the results within 24 hours. Are you listening to Cordeo or Rhoda as she says, it does appear that is a useless thing to do?
I will not agree that it's useless because there are a lot of challenges that would have been addressed at the national level, which were this time addressed at the constituency level. So this time that's why I was saying that we've not availed ourselves, applied ourselves more to the work of the constituency. Because sitting at the region and looking at the whole country is a difficult task. But the regional directors are there as supervisors of the district. So now there's nothing wrong with them getting their results, meeting these officers one by one. Because they, as I told you, as I'm saying, they met all the district officers so that they will be able to defend their results with them.
Right.
It meant that we have to bring all of them to head office.
Yes. Kofi Bentil has a question for you, but earlier he asked a question. I think you may want to address that. He asked a question. We know, for example, at least we know the NPP's coalition process, that they have a sophisticated machine or as in mechanism in place. They used it in 2016 and they appear to have perfected it in 2020. So that in real time, they're actually using an app that ensures that there are people at each of these polling stations are able to deliver the pink sheets to them in real time. The EC is supposed to be more structured, better structured, and better funded by the state. If a party can do this, why is the EC still going through this process that delays you and gets you, like Kofi suggested, making errors?
Something it's a good suggestion he's bringing, but in Ghana, where people don't trust anybody. I remember there was a time that even when you fax something, they said the fax is intercepted, altered before it continued. If we see to adopt what these things, there will be a lot of theory that will crop up. But with our paper trail, at any stage we involve the political parties. They are involved, and you can easily look at it and do sitting here. I don't think we have gotten to that stage.
Okay.
Because people don't trust our system. So we need to go slowly, involve people.
Kofi,
so that at any point in time we can track this.
Thank you. But I think that still exists within what we have seen the MPP do. Kofi, ask your question quickly so we can close this chapter.
Right. So I was saying that there is no way the EC can avoid or stop implementing an electronic collation system. We are just, spending time, waiting around something that will happen anyway. And I thought this was the time to do it. And with the trust, electronic systems actually create more trust. You can have the scanned and signed, paper placed behind that report. It is more effective. ATMs exist. They dish money out. There will be a paper trail. There will be a proper manual paper trail scanned and an electronic paper trail. I mean, to cut this short, Doctor, there is no way you can avoid this. And the technology is in place. What we should be doing is applying the new money, not in changing systems that are working, but in bringing up some of these new systems to avoid these problems. Regional collation centers will be made totally redundant if we implemented an electronic collation system.
All right.
Because it will be tagged and we will know which is coming from which region. In fact, this will help you avoid some of the problems that we are facing presently.
Okay, I don't seem to hear Dr. Kweku say they are not amenable to this, because they must be forward-looking, and that's why they sought to project to have a results within 24 hours, because this system allows you to see the results as well. Let's end with Rhoda, so that we take a break and return. Rhoda, you were going to your recommendations upon the observations of security arrangements, among others.
Yes, I think I'll begin with the coalition part because it's important. The issue of electronic transmission, I think it's a good idea. We have discussed this before, but at the same time, I think we need to also be cautious. Personally, having witnessed what I saw in Kenya in 2017, I think electronic transmission may be good, but at the same time, we have to consider other factors. So we shouldn't be boxed into this manual transmission. We should be open to other options, but at the same time, we also have to consider other factors because it will also may have its own challenges. The other issue, Dr. Kweku, you talked about all other things being equal. I'm sorry, but if you are planning for a process like an election, given all the human factors and elements, you cannot just make a specific target and say all other factors being equal because there's bound to be difficulties. But back to the issue of security deployment, I think so most of the polling stations from our data had adequate security. The challenge, I think, had to be where there were chaos, there was outbreak of violence, and I think the National Security Task Force has to look into the security deployment for these areas and how even the police or the security agencies enforce they try to enforce peace in this environment. Every election year, Kodio tries to bring together all stakeholders to review the process, and we believe this is something we are going to do as soon as we enter the upcoming, next year, 2021. But we will comprehensively review the entire process and come up with recommendations that we believe can further improve our electoral process.
Thank you very much, Rhoda. Thank you very much. We take a break here, and Rhoda takes leave of us. Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh will join us, and then my guests in the studio will now have their time to also share their views with you. I asked you to send in your questions for the EC and share your experiences with us as well. We're taking a break. We'll be right back. This is Newsfile.